Hey, we are back with another video here for Thursday. It's technically right now St. Patty's Day when I'm recording this, but hopefully everyone had a good St. Patty's Day. I'm wearing gray, but it doesn't really matter because you can't see me anyway, so no one can pinch me. All right, so what we're going to talk about today is, on Tuesday we talked about writing better body paragraphs. Today we're going to talk more about writing intros and conclusions, and this was page 68 through 72 that you were supposed to read in your book. Some quick announcements beforehand. Peer review is going to be next week, possibly in class, if we actually get the classroom back open. I don't know about that yet. I have not heard anything. As far as I know, it is still closed. But everyone is going to complete peer review on the discussion board. That discussion board is already set up for you to put your rough draft on there. So by Monday, next Monday, you are going to turn in your rough draft to the peer review rough draft D2L Dropbox and to the discussion board. And then there's instructions there that I will discuss with you a little bit more next week as far as completing peer review on the discussion board. It's pretty much the same thing that you did last time, where you just answer the questions about the people's papers that you're going to review. And I know the original assignment sheet said that your literature review is due Wednesday, but I've moved that to Friday. So your final draft, your rough draft's due Monday, your final draft is going to be due on Friday. And make sure that you are doing your quiz for attendance and your quiz grade. That is up. It's as of Thursday for this week. It is ready to go. Also, if you have any questions about your midterm grades, please let me know. And if you're not happy with it, there's still plenty of time to pull that up. Your quiz grades can make a difference. Your attendance, your writing process, and of course your big papers and that kind of thing will also help. But think about those little things that, turning in a thesis statement or turning in your peer review draft, all those things add up and they make a big piece of your paper or your overall grade. So you want to make sure that you're turning all of that in, because that can either really hurt you or really help you. So make sure that you're doing those. And again, if you have any questions about it, just let me know. So today what we're really going to be working on is learning why a well-crafted introduction and conclusion are important in academic writing. A lot of times people tend to leave those kind of as an afterthought. And I don't know about you, I'm one of those people that I write my intros and conclusions last. Mostly because I like to let the body of my paper and what I write there shape what my intro and conclusion are going to say. Some people start at the beginning and they start with the intro and then they go through body paragraph, and then they get down to the conclusion. And that's fine too. You just have to figure out what works best for you. Like I said, for me, I like to do the intro. Obviously I start with a thesis, that part of the introduction, but the actual crafting of the intro and conclusion, I tend to do that as the last step. But you have to remember they're just as important as doing those body paragraphs and using that support to support your thesis. So also, sorry, there's a helicopter going over my apartment right now. So the joy of living near Hunter Army Air Force Base. Learn how to best structure an essay intro that will introduce your subject and present your thesis, present your argument. I misspelled subject there. We're going to have to go back and correct that. And learn how to reverse that process and craft a conclusion that sums up everything you've said and restate your thesis. My issue a lot of times when I'm reading these papers is I get these really long, detailed introductions, and then I get all these body paragraphs, and then I get like a 2-sentence conclusion that doesn't really do the job that it's supposed to. And so we're going to talk today about how to make sure that your conclusion is doing the job that it's supposed to, just like the intro is. So start with intros. We're going to intro with it. Purpose of your intro is to establish your voice and tone or your attitude toward the subject. Now, I don't choose these little things. I don't know why this is the emoji that came up with it, but whatever. But you're there to establish your voice, your tone, to tell me what you are feeling about this particular subject that you're writing about. It's also going to introduce the general topic of the essay. So I should, by the end of your intro, not only get a general idea of what you're going to be talking about as far as topic, I also should, as we get to the end of it, state that thesis that's going to be supported in your body paragraphs. So you're going to start out fairly generally, and then you're going to work your way down to that specific thesis that you are going to be arguing for the rest of the paper. And here we go. We have the what we call the funnel method. And so this is what I find this particular graphic online. I always like this, where you start out kind of like a funnel where it's wide at the top and it gets down very narrow at the bottom. So when you start your intro, you're going to start with something like a broad general statement that kind of maybe connects the audience to the particular subject. Some sort of hook. So a hook is an engaging statement that is supposed to provoke your reader's interest. So something that grabs their attention and goes, okay, I got to read this. And then the next few sentences after that, you're going to start introducing your reader to the specific topic that you are going to be talking about. So you're going to start out fairly general with that hook, some general facts and ideas about the subject, and then as you get to the end, because remember your thesis is the sentence at the end of your intro, move deeper into that introduction, gradually narrow the focus, and then you get to that thesis. And that thesis is going to be the very specific argument that you're going to make for your paper. So again, start wide and general and get down to very specific thesis. So ways, when you think about writing a hook, something that's going to grab readers' attention, there's lots of different ways that you can do that. You could appeal to emotions. You could make your readers feel something, make an emotional attachment to the subject that you're talking about. You can use logic. You can begin with a provocative question. Or opinion. You want to answer those questions. In academic writing, it's usually a good idea if you're going to pose questions that you need to put the answers to those too. You just don't want to leave these questions floating out there. But you could start with a question, opening with a startling statistic or surprising fact, something that really gets their attention, like this, this is the number of something that's happening, and especially it's something you find in your research where you're like, wow, I didn't realize this. You could raise a question or series of questions, but again, make sure you're answering those. Presenting an explanation or rationalization for your essay. Now, don't talk in first person when you're doing this, but you can present like the general explanation of why this is a very important topic, that kind of thing. Opening with a relevant quotation or incident. So you could set a scene. You could start off talking about a historical event that happened, or if you are talking about a particular person or a particular group of people, maybe a quote from somebody who's famous or who was at an event, that kind of thing that really draws the reader in. You can open with a striking image. You could describe, again, like a scene, where you are, where the reader should be with their mind as they start getting into your particular paper. You could also include a personal anecdote. If it's something that is a personal topic to you that really drew you to it, if you start with that personal anecdote, it helps the reader connect to you and connect to the topic itself. So here's an example. Now this is a example from the book, and it's obviously this particular paragraph is about technology. So play Atari on a General Electric brand television set. Maybe watch Dynasty or read old newspaper articles on microfiche at the library. Now, you may not know what any of that stuff is, but if you are my age and older, I didn't really watch Dynasty. It was this nighttime soap opera, but my parents did. This was life, college life back in the 80s. So 25 years ago, the average college student did not have many options when it came to the entertainment in the form of technology. So we start out and we got some examples of technology, but they don't really seem like technology because we don't really know what they are. If you didn't live back then, you may not know what it is. And so it's kind of provocative to you. So you're starting out and you're like, oh, what are they talking about? And then the next sentence says, okay, 25 years ago, this is what the college student had. If they wanted to, if they wanted some entertainment, they had to watch TV on a big tube set, and they actually had to watch TV when it was on. They couldn't, TiVo it and that kind of stuff. But that second sentence explains exactly what we're talking about with those questions at the beginning. Fast forward to the 21st century, and the digital age has revolutionized the way people entertain themselves. In today's rapidly evolving world of digital technology, consumers are bombarded with endless options for how they do most everything, from buying and reading books to taking and developing photographs. So you see how it's getting a little bit more specific. Now they're saying, this is the way it used to be. Now there's so many more options. So you see we're starting out like fairly general, just kind of saying like a long time ago there wasn't a whole lot of technology, but now it's growing and growing, and now there are so many options In a society that is obsessed with digital means of entertainment, it is easy for the average person to become baffled. So now we get to where that's a little bit more specific. Now we're talking about, okay, there's all these options, but it can be confusing. And then we get down to the thesis. Everyone wants the newest and best digital technology, but the choices are many and the specifications are often confusing. What is the first problem with that thesis? If you have been in my class at all, you'll know that I don't like that word everyone, because not everyone doesn't always want the newest and best digital technology. So I would not use those absolutes in your thesis. A lot of people want the newest and best digital technology, but you want to kind of avoid using those absolutes like that. But you can tell what this paper is going to be about. It's like there's, everyone wants these new and amazing things, like that motorcycle that just went by. And, but there's also, sometimes it's hard for people to figure out what they want. So that's what this particular paper is going to be about. Hey, there's a lot of options. There's a lot more options than there used to be, but it's not going to be easy to figure out exactly what it is that you need. So that's what this particular paper is about. And then we get to the conclusions. It is important to put just as much effort into the conclusion as you do the intro. Please do not just at the last minute just kind of plop a couple sentences down at the end. The conclusion is where you end. That's where your reader leaves you, and you want to leave them very strong. You want to give them a lasting impression when they're reading your paper, that they feel like they've gotten something out of this paper, and that they feel like maybe there's something they can do about the issue, or that they've been changed just by listening to your argument, that kind of thing. Your intro and conclusion should be about the same length. So in general, you would look at intros. I usually go for somewhere around, 4 or 5 sentences at least. You don't want it to be super long. I see some intros that spill onto a second page. That's a little bit too much. But usually, like 4 or 5 sentences. But you want to do that for both the intro and the conclusion. So the anatomy of a good conclusion. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to restate your thesis at the beginning of your conclusion. You are not going to copy and paste that thesis. You're going to restate it in different words. So it helps you assemble in orderly fashion all the information you have explained in the body. So you repeat that thesis because it reminds your reader, like, hey, this is the argument that we've been talking about this whole time. It shows how you've proven it. They're really into the helicopters today. Then you're going to review your main points and emphasize the importance of the topic. So you're going to give us kind of a general idea of what you've been talking about within that paper. So these sentences should progressively broaden the focus of your thesis and maneuver your reader out of the essay. So you think about with the intro, it's a funnel. It starts off really generally, and then it gets down to that point, that very specific point. Your conclusion is going to do the opposite. It's going to start with your very specific point, your thesis, and then it's going to broaden out from there. So many writers like to end their essays with a final emphatic statement, something that's very strong that will cause your readers to continue thinking about the implications of your essay, your topic, your argument that you're trying to make. It's going to make your paper more memorable. And other times people like to do something called a call to action. So that challenges your reader to make a change either in their thoughts or their actions. This is kind of a call to action is you're going to do something. This is what can be done. Here's a solution, and you can be part of the solution. So you put that at the end so that they've learned all this information about the topic you've been talking about, and now they're turning it and saying, now this is what you can do about it. Challenging your readers to see the subject through new eyes is a powerful way to ease yourself and your readers out of the essay. So for some reason they have the graphic for the intro online, but they don't have a conclusion one that's the opposite, so I just had to make one. But think of the conclusion like the reverse funnel as opposed to the funnel for the intro. So you're going to restate your thesis in new words. Again, don't copy and paste. And then review your main supporting points that you talked about, and then end with a final thought or call to action. So you're going to go from specific to general versus your intro is general to specific. So avoid doing these things in your conclusion. Introducing new material. If you have new material to talk about, make that a body paragraph. It can be kind of confusing when you start trying to introduce new material in your conclusion. It's it makes the reader want to know more there, which you could just explain in a body paragraph. So you want to make sure that your intro and your conclusion, especially your conclusion, are just summing up what you've already said, not introducing new material there. Contradicting your thesis. You definitely don't want to go against your thesis or change your thesis at the end, because it makes your reader think that you don't really have a strong feeling or conviction about what you're saying. It may feel kind of wishy-washy, that you don't really have a strong stance. Because remember, in this research paper, you're taking a strong stand on what you are talking about. So you spent this whole paper arguing this one thesis. If you change it at the end, it kind of undoes everything that you've already done. So you definitely don't want to change it. You don't want to change sides or open up your point of view and go, what do I know? I don't know. Stick to your convictions. That just, again, makes it seem like you're not very confident in what you're saying. So you want to write to be confident in what you're arguing. Don't use apologies or disclaimers. Sometimes I get papers where it's like, I don't know if I did a really good job out there. This is the best I could do. Don't do that. Stick by your guns. Believe in your argument and don't apologize for your opinion. If it's a tough subject, don't apologize for talking about a tough subject. Again, like we talked about in class, no one, there's no change in a comfort zone. So, talking about those tough subjects is something that's important. So you do not want your readers to feel like you're not being very convincing and that kind of thing. Effective writers stand by their thesis statement and do not stray from it, and they don't apologize for it. So this is the example. So the first one we looked at, and we'll look at these, compare them in just a second. But this is the conclusion for that paper that we just read the intro for. In a society fixated on the latest and smartest digital technology, a consumer can easily become confused by the countless options and specifications. And if you'll remember, that's very similar to what the thesis statement is. And in the next slide, we'll actually look at them side by side. The ever-changing state of digital technology challenges consumers with its updates and add-ons and expanding markets and incompatible formats and restrictions, a fact that is complicated by salesmen who want to sell them anything. So you can imagine in the paper between that intro and this conclusion that they were talking about updates, add-ons, talking about the expanding market, they were talking about the salesmen, they were talking about the different formats, the restrictions. You can kind of tell from that sentence, these were the different body paragraphs that were in between these two, this intro and this conclusion. And that's what you're doing as a way to just kind of review over the main points that you're going to cover in your paper when you write your conclusion. In a world that is increasingly driven by instant gratification, it's easy for people to buy the first thing they see. The solution for many people should be to avoid buying on impulse. Consumers should think about what they really need, not what is advertised. So you see how it kind of moved back out. So we kind of were being very specific about how the options are very confusing and specifications can be confusing. And there's those salesmen that work on commission and they just want to sell you stuff. There's all that that's happening. We're working our way out of that back to consumers. This is what consumers should be doing. There's that solution. They give us a solution at the end, is that don't buy on impulse. That's the thing that's going to mess you up. As the helicopter goes over again. The military base is so very close. Okay, so comparing these two thesis statements from the intro conclusion, you can see how they're very similar. So the intro, everyone wants the newest and best digital technology, but the choices are many and the specifications, man, I misspelled that one real good, are often confusing. And so you see that particular specific thesis statement. In a society fixated on the latest and smartest digital technology, a consumer can easily become confused by the countless options and specifications. So you can see here how they're very, very much related. They're talking about the specifications. They're talking about the options, choices versus options. This says the same thing, but they're saying it in different words. And that's the way you should do with your intro and conclusion. At the beginning of that conclusion, you restate that thesis and you do it in different words. So it's not just copy and pasted, but it reminds the reader of your argument. Okay, before we get to this, let's look at, I have your, under content, I've posted your sample paper that I wrote for this particular assignment that you're working on. So let's look at that really quickly to see at the intro and conclusion of that. So this is the basic I went over this in another video, but I highlighted all this stuff. All of this stuff is not something you need to include in your paper. I just did this for your benefit, to show you my outline and that kind of stuff. But let's look at the intro. Television shows and movies based around the lives of young adults are popular sources of entertainment, and with the rapid consumption of popular media in daily life, depictions and glorification of unhealthy dramatic teen relationships can lead to teen interpersonal violence in the real world. Now, that's a very long sentence, I apologize, but that introduces you to the topic. So now we know that we're going to talk about television shows and movies, and we're going to talk about unhealthy, possibly dramatic teen relationships. Even though young adult media entertainment abounds, there is relatively little research on the correlation between mass media and interpersonal violence and unhealthy real-life relationships. So this is the lit review paper. We're looking at the sources. So we've introduced the topic in that first sentence, and now we've introduced what this paper is about. So now we're going to be talking about, you can see how we're going to be talking about the research between the correlation between the mass media and actual real-life relationships. And then for your intro for this particular assignment, you're going to introduce your different sources. So this is what I did here. In one article, the writers examine the effects of sex-centered comedies and films on teen sexual attitudes and behaviors, while another article looks at how viewing relational aggression on television can lead to actual violence in teen relationships. So we're having 3 articles that introduces 2 of them. The third source discusses the effects of nonviolent female subservient depictions in rap videos on African American teens' attitudes toward dating violence. So we started out fairly general. This is our subject. This is what we're going to be talking about, the research. Here's a very general overview of the research. And then the 3 sources agree that viewing depictions of violence in mass media increases the likelihood of violence in teen relationships, but they differ as to what degree and why mass media actually influences young people. So now we know that's the argument we're going to be talking about through this whole paper that I'm going to scroll through until we get to there's the conclusion, which you'll notice does look a little shorter. It doesn't have as giant of a sentence in it as the intro does. So here we go. I am restating the thesis here. The 3 sources here all agree that there is a connection between real-life dating violence and the relationship violence that is shown in mass media, but they do not agree on how much and why. So you'll remember that's what that thesis statement said. I've got a generalized version, that same thing, but it's just in different words. While teen dating violence and young people's exposure to mass media is a growing concern, there are not a lot of sources that examine how behavior in mass media affects the level of interpersonal relationship violence with teens. So we're working our way out of that subject. We got the specific thesis, and then we've got the reminder like, hey, there's not a whole lot of research on this, and they, because I've talked about that up in the paper. Further research is needed to discover a stronger answer to the question if there is a direct connection between mass media consumption and teen dating violence. So if I were to, and this is my paper and I wrote it, but if I were to revise this, I would actually put probably another sentence or 2 in there to just kind of fully work our way out. It feels like I've got my thesis, but I don't know that I'm getting us all the way out. I mean, further research is needed is kind of a call to action, like, hey, we need to look at this stuff more. But I feel like there maybe could be one more sentence at the end of here that would be a little bit better at really summing up what we're getting to there. But that's the example on the full paper. Remember that I've attached this a lot of places throughout on D2L. So as you're writing your paper, make sure that you're reviewing this so that you make sure that you're doing the way you're doing your assignment the way that it is supposed to be done. So peer review draft, like I said, is due Monday, the 22nd. You're turning that into the Dropbox and the discussion board. And all the instructions all the instructions for peer review are on the discussion board. Review the sample lit review paper like I just showed you. As you're writing, make sure you're kind of referring back to that and that you've got, the information that's supposed to be, because that information on that outline that I put at the beginning of it is the information you need to have in your paper to show how those particular sources compare and contrast. Make sure you complete that weekly quiz, which is live as of Thursday. This is probably when you're watching this or later. For the attendance and quiz grade, And your final draft is going to be due on Friday, so a week from this Friday. And as always, feel free if you have any questions. I will be, even though we're not in the classroom on Thursday, I will be in my office during my regular office hours and through class time. So you can chat with me on D2L. You can call, text, email, drop by, like whatever you need to do. If you need to email me some of your paper to see if you're on the right track, I can help you with that. Just let me know, and I hope everyone has a great day.